These are all the commanders who appeared in this historical event, along with the time, date, and location of their involvement. General George S. Patton, United States Army, commanding U.S. 2 Corps, present at Kasserine Pass, Tunisia, overseeing defensive positions at 0630 to 1200 hours, February 19, 1943. Colonel Robert Stark, United States Army, commanding 2nd Infantry Division units, located along the southern ridge of Kasserine Pass, coordinating artillery support 0600 to 1100 hours, February 19, 1943. Lieutenant James Holloway, United States Army, commanding forward observation posts, stationed at a high ridge overlooking main road through Kasserine Pass, from 0615 to 1130 hours, February 19, 1943. Sergeant Harold Klein, United States Army, field leader of frontline infantry squads, holding positions near eastern slopes of the pass, 0630 to 1130 hours. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, German Army, commanding panzer divisions, at Spitla Observation Point, overseeing the German assault from 0600 to 1200 hours, February 19, 1943. General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim, German Army, supervising infantry and mechanized units, present at command post near Western Pass approaches, 0615 to 1200 hours. Time, 0600 hours. Date, February 19, 1943. Location, Kasserine Pass, Tunisia. Weather, clear morning, dry desert winds, temperature 12 degrees C rising to 22 degrees Celsius by noon. Units involved, U.S. 2 Corps, 2nd Infantry Division, assorted American forward observation posts, German panzer and infantry units, mechanized support. At 0600 hours, the desert air in Kasserine Pass felt eerily still, carrying the faint scent of warm sand and rock. American infantrymen of U.S. 2 Corps crouched behind shallow trenches and rocks, rifles ready, nerves taut. Private Daniel Whitaker whispered to Private Anthony Marino, "Can you hear them yet?" The faint hum of engines in the distance signaled the approach of German armor. Sergeant Harold Klein moved along the line, checking positions and issuing brief instructions as the soldiers tried to steady their hands. Lieutenant James Holloway, perched on a high observation ridge, focused binoculars on the distant movement, confirming silhouettes of Panzer III and IV tanks. The realization of impending combat gripped every man, adrenaline mixing with fear as the desert sun rose above the rocky terrain, highlighting the narrow pass and the danger that loomed. By 0615 hours, the mechanical roar of engines grew steadily louder. The panzer columns, accompanied by German infantry moving low along the road, became visible from the ridges. Soldiers instinctively pressed closer to cover, while Sergeant Klein shouted, "Stay calm! Hold your fire!" Lieutenant Holloway keyed his radio, reporting to Colonel Stark, "Enemy armor advancing through the pass. Positions compromised if we do not act immediately." Dust rose in thin plumes as treads churned sand and rock, the rhythmic pounding echoing against the hills. Rommel observed from Spitla, noting the Americans' inexperience, yet recognizing their determination. Von Arnim added, "Speed and pressure will break them soon." Every soldier's senses heightened, acutely aware of the approaching danger. At 0625 hours, German tanks crested the ridge, angular hulls reflecting sunlight, moving with disciplined precision down the narrow road. Private Whitaker's hands shook as he whispered, There they are." Sergeant Klein's voice cut through the tension. "Positions. Focus your sectors. Don't waste fire." Artillery coordination crackled over radios, as Holloway relayed precise targeting adjustments. Dust clouds rose around armored units, infantry moving in tandem, shouting in German. The American soldiers, tense and frightened, relied on instincts and training, each heartbeat syncing with the roar of engines. Every second brought them closer to inevitable contact, the narrow pass compressing space and amplifying the fear, determination, and anticipation of the first moments of combat on February 19, 1943. At 0630 hours, rifle fire erupted across the pass. Bullets thudded into sandbags and rocks, one shell exploding near the forward position. Private Whitaker squeezed the trigger, sweat stinging his eyes, while Sergeant Klein moved between men, shouting, "Hold steady. Focus." Holloway directed artillery fire via radio, "Adjust 3 degrees left. Concentrate near the rocky outcrop." Rommel observed, noting their persistence, muttering, "Even inexperienced troops can be dangerous." German infantry adjusted and flanked slightly, tanks grinding forward. The sun glinted off metal, shadows stretched across rocks, and soldiers whispered encouragement to one another, their camaraderie a fragile shield against the overwhelming roar, dust, and chaos of Kasserine Pass at 0630 hours. By 0645 hours, artillery rounds from American units struck German armor, sending dust and debris into the air. "Direct hit," Holloway shouted. Sergeant Klein repositioned men behind cover. "Stay low. Keep your sectors clear." German tanks pressed on, infantry regrouped, and Rommel noted their resilience. "They fight with tenacity, but we must maintain pressure." Von Arnim coordinated his infantry to support advancing panzers. The interplay of sound, roaring engines, rifles, explosions, created a chaotic symphony of war. Soldiers' hearts pounded, yet discipline and training guided each action. Every movement, glance, and command could mean life or death in the sun-scorched, narrow terrain of the pass. At 0655 hours, the heat began rising, pressing down on men and machinery alike. Private Whitaker whispered to Marino, "We might not make it, but we keep firing." Sergeant Klein urged, "Conserve ammo. Target the tank's tracks if possible." Holloway called in artillery corrections, tracking German adjustments. Rommel observed, analyzing American positions, commenting, "Their nerves hold, but inexperience shows." German coordination remained relentless, each tank and infantry unit calculated to crush defenses. Dust, heat, and the roar of engines created a sensory overload, yet soldiers pressed on, adrenaline sharp, instincts heightened, survival and determination driving every movement across the rugged desert terrain at 0655 hours. By 0705 hours, American artillery found its marks, immobilizing one panzer and slowing German infantry. Whitaker crouched behind cover, heart hammering, whispering, "We're holding for now." Holloway relayed precise fire adjustments while Colonel Stark coordinated reinforcements. Sergeant Klein kept his squad moving and alert, shouting instructions over the roar of battle. Rommel noted stubborn American defense, murmuring to von Arnim, "Even green troops can frustrate armored units." The desert sun climbed, shadows sharpening, soldier senses acute, adrenaline surging with every incoming shell, every exchanged shot, and every shifting piece of terrain, shaping a tense, immersive confrontation. At 0715 hours, an explosion rocked a nearby outcrop, throwing dust and debris into the air. Whitaker was knocked backward, ears ringing, as Sergeant Klein helped him up. Holloway called in artillery corrections. 50 meters left. Concentrate on infantry near 3rd Panzer. Marino gripped his rifle, whispering a silent prayer. Rommel observed, impressed by their adaptation under pressure. Their fire discipline improves under duress. German infantry moved cautiously, tanks grinding forward. Heat and dust intensified, yet Americans maintained focus. Each shot, maneuver, and command reinforced the fragile defense along the pass, as tension and fear mixed with resolve under the bright, oppressive morning sun of February 19, 1943. By 0725 hours, positions were a blur of motion and gunfire. Soldiers ducked behind cover, coordinating rifle and artillery fire to slow tanks and infantry. Whitaker felt the mix of terror and determination as shells exploded around him. Klein shouted orders. "Focus fire. Adjust your aim." Holloway relayed artillery corrections, while Rommel and von Arnim adjusted German movements. Dust, smoke, heat, and noise created a suffocating environment, yet soldiers' instincts, training, and camaraderie held them together. Every decision and movement in these critical minutes carried immense weight, shaping the unfolding battle and marking the first hours of combat at Kasserine Pass. At 0735 hours, the first small victories became visible. One tank immobilized, infantry slowed, and a brief halt in the German advance. Whitaker whispered to Marino, "We're holding for now." Klein repositioned squads. Nothing passes unchecked. Holloway coordinated artillery, while Rommel frowned at the Americans' stubborn defense. Von Arnim adjusted infantry to compensate for stalled tanks. Dust and smoke mixed with gunfire and shouted orders, yet soldiers pressed on, relying on courage, training, and trust. The sun illuminated the tense battlefield, Soldiers' faces etched with determination and fear, capturing the intense human struggle at Kasserine Pass on February 19, 1943. The desert sun climbed higher over Kasserine Pass at 0745 hours on February 19, 1943, casting harsh shadows across the rugged terrain. American soldiers adjusted their positions behind rocks and low ridges, sweat mixing with dust as they prepared for the next wave of German armored assault. Private Whitaker wiped grit from his eyes and muttered, "I hope we can hold them." Sergeant Klein, crouched beside him, replied firmly, "Focus, Whitaker. One shot at a time. Stick with your squad." Lieutenant Holloway scanned the horizon with binoculars, noting the glint of Panzer IV hulls reflecting sunlight. "Call in artillery on the left flank, now," he shouted into his radio. The roar of engines and the echo of distant gunfire filled the pass, amplifying tension. Even amid chaos, Whitaker felt an odd clarity, a sense of historical significance as these events unfolded, and for a moment wondered aloud to the camera if viewers could feel the weight of this reality, subtly reminding them to like and subscribe for more real historical content. By 0755 hours, German infantry began flanking the eastern ridges, attempting to encircle the American positions. Sergeant Klein signaled his men to open fire on advancing soldiers, bullets tearing into the sand and stone. Private Marino shivered, both from fear and the cold morning wind, whispering, "We trained for this, but it's nothing like I imagined." Holloway relayed artillery adjustments with precision, directing shells toward the gaps in enemy formations. From Spitla, Rommel observed the Americans' stubborn resistance, noting their unexpected tactical decisions. "Their discipline under fire is unusual for green troops," he murmured to von Arnim. Tanks continued their relentless advance, engines growling as they crushed rocks and sand. Dust clouds rose, mixing with smoke and gunpowder, creating a hazy battlefield that tested every soldier's nerves. Each command, each whispered encouragement, and every hurried action reinforced the fragility and courage of the American defense in the heat of the morning. At 0805 hours, the first American casualties occurred near a rocky outcrop on the southern approach. Private Whitaker watched in horror as Corporal Hayes went down, shouting, "Medic!" Sergeant Klein immediately responded, covering his squad while directing fire to suppress advancing enemy infantry. Holloway adjusted artillery fire to prevent German flanking movements. Rommel's eyes narrowed as he tracked the slowed armored column. "They fight for every foot of terrain," he remarked, observing through his telescope. Von Arnim took note of the Americans' tactical cohesion, muttering, "Even untested troops can slow a mechanized advance if terrain favors them." The soldiers' fear was palpable, but so was their determination. Each movement carried a tension between life and death, the deafening roar of engines and artillery a constant reminder of the brutal reality, while the scorching sunlight reflected off armor and weapons, intensifying the surreal intensity of Kasserine Pass. By 0815 hours, the Americans managed to temporarily halt one panzer column near the central ridge. Lieutenant Holloway's voice crackled over the radio, "Concentrate all fire on the immobilized tank. Infantry, cover the flanks." Private Marino pressed against the earth, knees shaking, but fired with grim determination. Sergeant Klein barked orders, ensuring all sectors remained covered. Rommel noted the tactical pause, intrigued by the Americans' ability to exploit terrain, and commented to von Arnim, "They are learning quickly, adapting under extreme pressure." The deafening sounds of engines, explosions, and rifle fire combined with heat, dust, and adrenaline created a surreal intensity. Soldiers whispered to each other, offering brief reassurances. Amid the chaos, a subtle thought entered Whitaker's mind. If viewers could feel the weight of this moment, perhaps they'd understand history's cost, a gentle nudge to subscribe to continue witnessing these events. At 0825 hours, American artillery hit a secondary panzer unit, sending a plume of dust into the sky and halting movement temporarily. Sergeant Klein motioned his squad forward slightly, careful not to expose anyone. Private Whitaker glanced at the immobilized tank, whispering, "We might actually hold them." Holloway coordinated with forward observation posts, adjusting fire with rapid efficiency. Rommel frowned at the unexpected delay, muttering, "Even with superior armor, the terrain can be a trap." Von Arnim reinforced infantry movements, shifting soldiers to prevent gaps. The combination of artillery, small arms fire, and terrain familiarity gave the Americans breathing room. Dust and smoke obscured visibility, amplifying tension, yet soldiers pressed on, adrenaline and fear intertwining. Each heartbeat, each command, each gunshot underscored the peril and valor defining the morning battle, leaving an indelible mark on all who fought. By 08:35 hours, the heat of the desert rose sharply, sun beating down on exhausted soldiers. Whitaker's hands were raw from gripping his rifle, sweat streaking his dust-covered face. Sergeant Klein urged him, "Keep firing, stay low." The roar of engines and explosion echoes filled the air. Holloway called for artillery correction as German infantry attempted another flanking maneuver. Rommel observed the Americans' use of cover, noting their stubborn resilience. They may be inexperienced, but they understand survival. Von Arnim moved troops to reinforce armor, attempting to regain momentum. Each soldier felt the crushing weight of responsibility, fear, and adrenaline, the tension thick as smoke and dust enveloped the battlefield. Briefly, Whitaker wondered if viewers watching would feel the terror and courage intertwined, reinforcing the importance of historical understanding. At 08:45 hours, communication between squads became critical. Sergeant Klein coordinated radio updates, ensuring no sector was unmonitored. Private Marino fired steadily, teeth clenched, eyes focused on advancing infantry. Holloway adjusted artillery rounds near the southern approach, preventing German flanking. Rommel observed subtle adjustments by Americans, impressed by rapid adaptation. They are beginning to fight as a unit. Von Arnim frowned, aware of slowed progress. The sounds of battle, shells exploding, engines grinding, rifles cracking, combined with the oppressive sun and dust created a near unbearable environment. Soldiers whispered words of encouragement, small gestures of humanity amid chaos. The tactical stalemate demonstrated the unpredictable cost of terrain and morale, marking a pivotal moment in Kasserine Pass's early engagement. By 08:55 hours, one German panzer caught fire after concentrated artillery fire, its crew scrambling to escape. Whitaker and Marino exchanged a stunned glance, hearts pounding. Sergeant Klein ordered, "Focus fire on any infantry attempting to support that tank." Holloway called coordinates to artillery, precision and speed critical. Rommel observed, muttering, "Persistence is required. Even minor delays can affect momentum." Von Arnim adjusted unit positions, directing reserves forward. Dust and smoke created a near-impenetrable haze, amplifying tension. Soldiers' exhaustion was profound, yet adrenaline sustained them. Each decision, each maneuver, each whispered command defined survival and courage, as history unfolded in the scorching, dusty expanse of Kasserine Pass on February 19, 1943. At 09:05 hours, the Americans pressed their advantage, using terrain to funnel German infantry into kill zones. Whitaker crouched behind a rock, firing into advancing soldiers, adrenaline sharp. Klein coordinated squads, maintaining discipline amid chaos. Holloway adjusted artillery fire, focusing on gaps in German formation. Rommel observed, concerned at the Americans' growing tactical confidence. Green troops with discipline can surprise even the most experienced. Von Arnim reinforced positions, ordering troops to compensate for stalled armor. The battlefield was a blur of dust, smoke, and noise, yet every soldier acted with purpose. In fleeting moments, Whitaker thought of viewers witnessing the courage and stakes, the human cost behind historical documentation, subtly reminding them of the channel's commitment to real history. By 09:15 hours, the first major German assault was stalled entirely. Soldiers adjusted positions, taking brief moments to breathe, reload, and coordinate. Whitaker and Marino whispered words of resolve. Klein encouraged men to stay focused. Holloway relayed artillery adjustments, ensuring no gaps in coverage. Rommel frowned at the delay, noting the Americans' improved cohesion. Von Arnim repositioned infantry and mechanized units, attempting to regain momentum. Dust, heat, and smoke combined with constant fire created a grueling environment. Yet soldiers persisted, adrenaline, fear, and determination guiding actions. Every movement carried historical weight, and the men were acutely aware of the significance of these first hours at Kasserine Pass, marking an unforgettable morning in the Tunisia campaign. By 09:25 hours, the sun beat relentlessly down on Kasserine Pass, illuminating the exhausted faces of American soldiers as they regrouped behind rocky outcrops. Private Whitaker ducked low, wiping sweat and dust from his brow, whispering to Marino, "I never imagined the desert could feel like this, alive with death." Sergeant Klein reassured the men, "Keep your wits sharp. They're vulnerable when they overextend." Lieutenant Holloway relayed artillery adjustments across the ridge, coordinating fire to cut off flanking German infantry. Rommel observed the Americans' persistence through his scope, commenting to von Arnim, "They fight with stubborn courage despite their inexperience." Dust rose in clouds as artillery shells struck near enemy armor. Amid the chaos, Whitaker thought about the history he was part of, realizing viewers watching could appreciate the stakes of these moments if they subscribed to witness authentic World War II battles. At 0935 hours, German infantry attempted another flanking maneuver along the southern slope. Private Marino's hands shook as he aimed at advancing soldiers, whispering, "We hold, somehow." Sergeant Klein barked orders, ensuring no gaps were exposed. Holloway adjusted artillery fire, coordinating with observation posts to maximize accuracy. Rommel muttered, "Even minor American tactics are affecting our rhythm." Von Arnim repositioned mechanized units to protect advancing panzers. Dust, heat, and the roar of engines combined with gunfire, creating a suffocating, high-stakes environment. Each soldier felt the crushing weight of responsibility and fear, yet determination and camaraderie guided every move. Whitaker, pausing briefly behind cover, silently encouraged viewers to like and subscribe, noting the importance of learning from history to understand courage under fire. By 0945 hours, artillery shells exploded near the forward German units, immobilizing infantry and scattering cover. Whitaker ducked behind a boulder, sweat and grit coating his uniform, heart racing. Sergeant Klein coordinated return fire, shouting, "Keep pressure. Don't let them regroup." Holloway called precise coordinates to strike enemy gaps. Rommel observed through binoculars, frowning as German movement slowed, muttering, "Green troops, yes, but resilient and quick to adapt." Von Arnim shifted reinforcements to prevent breakthroughs. Dust, smoke, and the relentless sun created a sensory overload, yet soldiers' instincts kept them alive. Each action was deliberate, each heartbeat a reminder of mortality and courage. The experience, intense and vivid, highlighted the stakes and decisions shaping history at February 19, 1943. At 0955 hours, a German panzer column stalled under concentrated fire, its crew scrambling to repair tracks. Whitaker whispered, "We're actually stopping them." Sergeant Klein reminded men to stay alert, "Don't celebrate yet, focus your sectors." Holloway relayed artillery instructions with precision, preventing enemy infantry from supporting the tank. Rommel's brow furrowed, noting the Americans' improved defensive tactics, while von Arnim adjusted armored maneuvers to compensate. The heat rose, dust choked vision, and gunfire echoed through Kasserine Pass. Soldiers' adrenaline surged with every shell, every command, every glance at advancing armor. Whitaker imagined viewers watching the scene, considering the complexity of battle, subtly reinforcing the importance of subscribing for authentic historical content. By 1005 hours, American soldiers leveraged terrain to create effective kill zones for German infantry. Whitaker crouched low, firing steadily, while Marino took cover behind a ridge. Sergeant Klein coordinated movements, ensuring every sector was watched. Holloway adjusted artillery fire, cutting off enemy paths. Rommel observed, muttering, "Persistence and cunning can slow even experienced units." Von Arnim repositioned infantry, but terrain favored the Americans, slowing German momentum. Dust, smoke, heat, and relentless gunfire created a tense, surreal environment. Soldiers whispered encouragement to each other, drawing strength from camaraderie and training. Each decision, maneuver, and moment of courage highlighted the human element in warfare, and the audience could reflect on the stakes if they watched with care. At 1015 hours, one of the immobilized tanks caught fire, sending flames and smoke skyward. Whitaker and Marino exchanged wide-eyed glances, hearts racing. Sergeant Klein ordered, "Focus on their infantry, don't give them room." Holloway relayed artillery coordinates, precision now more critical than ever. Rommel noted the pause, observing Americans' ability to exploit vulnerabilities, while von Arnim adjusted reinforcements. The battlefield was a haze of smoke, dust, and sunlight reflecting off armor and rocks. Soldiers' fatigue mingled with adrenaline and fear, yet they continued. Each shot, maneuver, and command carried life-or-death weight. Whitaker considered the viewer's perspective, wondering how history's intensity could be conveyed for both education and engagement. By 10:25 hours, German forces began retreating slightly, reassessing positions under relentless fire. Whitaker whispered, "We're doing it, holding them back." Sergeant Klein encouraged his squad, moving between men and checking sectors. Holloway continued artillery coordination, noting enemy adjustments. Rommel muttered in frustration, "Even minimal American experience has tactical consequences." Von Arnim adjusted troop positions to prevent disorder. Dust and smoke made communication challenging, but discipline held. Soldiers' courage, fear, and determination intertwined as the heat of midday pressed down. Each movement and decision reflected the human cost and strategy of Kasserine Pass. Whitaker's thoughts again subtly nudged viewers to like and subscribe to witness these authentic moments. At 1035 hours, American infantry pressed the advantage, targeting exposed enemy soldiers while artillery pinned tanks. Whitaker crouched behind cover, issuing whispered encouragement to Marino, "Stay calm, stay precise." Sergeant Klein ensured coordination, shouting over noise. Holloway adjusted fire to prevent counterattacks. Rommel observed, muttering, "Their stubbornness is remarkable." Von Arnim shifted reinforcements, calculating risk. Dust, heat, smoke, and artillery created an overwhelming sensory landscape. Soldiers relied on training, instinct, and camaraderie. The desert battlefield became a crucible, each moment shaping the outcome. Every exchange of fire, maneuver, and command held historical significance, emphasizing bravery, strategy, and sacrifice in vivid detail. By 10:45 hours, the sun high over Kasserine Pass, the Americans consolidated their positions, maintaining pressure as German momentum faltered. Whitaker breathed heavily, glancing at scattered debris and immobilized tanks. Sergeant Klein ensured sectors were secure, whispering encouragement to exhausted men. Holloway continued coordination, tracking enemy movement. Rommel frowned at the stalled advance, noting tactical gains by inexperienced troops. Von Arnim repositioned units to maintain cohesion. Dust, smoke, and the roar of battle persisted, yet Americans adapted. Soldiers' resilience, fear, and courage intertwined with strategy, painting a vivid historical tableau. The audience could reflect on these moments, the human cost, and the unpredictable nature of war, highlighting the value of authentic historical storytelling. By 10:55 hours, German forces began a broader withdrawal from Kasserine Pass, regrouping to reconsider tactics. Whitaker and Marino exhaled, exhausted yet aware the battle was far from over. Sergeant Klein urged continued vigilance, ensuring no gaps. Holloway coordinated artillery to cover potential enemy maneuvers. Rommel, observing from Spitla, noted the Americans' growing tactical competence, murmuring, "Even inexperienced forces can be formidable when terrain is leveraged." Von Arnim directed remaining units to stabilize retreat. Dust and heat hung heavy, while the sounds of battle gradually softened. Soldiers reflected on survival, courage, and teamwork. The audience is left to consider the human element and decisions that shaped these early engagements in Tunisia. As 1,100 hours approached, the Americans held the pass, battered but resolute. Whitaker glanced around, exhausted but proud of his squad, whispering to Marino, "History is happening here, and we're part of it." Sergeant Klein nodded, acknowledging courage, endurance, and the harsh lessons learned. Holloway continued monitoring enemy movements, ensuring no surprise maneuvers. Rommel and Von Arnim retreated to plan the next assault. The sun beat down, dust and smoke mingling with the echoes of battle. These moments highlighted human bravery, tactical decision-making, and historical consequence. For viewers, this episode serves as a reflection on the real cost of war and the lessons history imparts. The events depicted are authentic, demonstrating courage, fear, and sacrifice under fire, leaving the audience with a deep understanding of what unfolded at Kasserine Pass.